Good afternoon to all. Buenas tardes. This is a great pleasure to be here again. Third time. I think I was here in the late 90s when Roberto Porro was here as a student. Some of you certainly know him, remember. Very good PhD thesis on cattle in the Amazon. Then I was here in this beautiful meeting in October that you organized. And I should have told you that as a result of that meeting, for me and for Tom Lovejoy, we team up during that meeting and we decided to publish an editorial in Science Advances, which was published in February, had a tremendous repercussion. So it was really a brain storm arising from that meeting. So thank you again for inviting me to spend a week here. I'm loving these first 2 days, and I promise to come back. I was asked to give two lectures. So the one on Thursday, it will be more standard, the science I've been doing for 35 years, at least, in the Amazon, and just the climate dynamics, forest, climate equilibrium, whether we are perturbing that equilibrium. But the other talk, I decided to move completely away from that. And I will tell you that this idea of, I will tell you about an initiative that I'm starting with colleagues, mostly in Brazil, but does not have to be only Brazilian, that we call Third Way Initiative. I will explain. And basically is to try to answer that question, which we haven't answered, because it's a difficult, tough question to answer, whether a new industrial revolution can save or can help saving the Amazon forest. Why do I get involved in these issues? I'm not an economist, I'm not a technology person, because basically after 35 years of only pointing the risks, pointing out, warning, I was kind of, a preacher warning of the scenes of hell. I decided that I would spend perhaps a few years of my life, professional life, in solution space. It's very difficult. Don't think it's easier just to warn about risks. But I decided, I'm retired from my position at INPE, and I said, okay, I will spend a few years. Of course, my original background is in engineering, but I completely forgot about electronics. So it's basically to try to move on to solution spaces. And this is very much not a purely scientific presentation, but it's more like a provocation. I want to provoke you to think this is the most important center of Amazonian studies in this beautiful country. And I think I want to provoke you to think about that. Not many people think about technology as one possibility for the Amazon. I had a lot of help from my colleagues and students. Since some of you are not going to be here on Thursday, I will very briefly discuss the three first topics. The focus, the core of my presentation on Thursday is number 2, land use and climate change risks to the Amazon forest. I will deal in detail with that, but I want just to flash through some of these results. So I've been involved. I was a program scientist for the LBA experiment, and basically in the LBA, we are trying to show that Amazon is a very important regional entity of the Earth system in the Anthropocene. I think most of you are very familiar with the Amazonian ecosystems, and I don't have to spend a lot of time, but just to flash some of these figures, which are always very impressive. The carbon cycle is a very potent sink, probably out of 16 billion tons of CO2 being soaked up by forests in the world, the Amazon, something between 2 and 3. So the Amazon is an important carbon sink, and of course an important carbon storage, about 120 billion tons of carbon store. Very powerful hydrology, very important for for ocean, Western Atlantic Ocean circulations, and all sorts of biogeochemistry that depends on that beautiful flow to 220 cubic meters per second. I don't have to tell you. That I've been asking if anybody of you ecologists, you can tell me what's the percent of biodiversity in the Amazon. You tell me, because I've been asking that question for 5 years and nobody tells me. It seems not well known, but everybody says it's not less than 10%. It's not less than 10% of world's species. We know perhaps 1.5 million species today, so it's probably 150, minimum 150,000 species. This is the area I dedicate a lot of attention studies. How important is Amazon for climate? Amazon is a very important area where heat is input into the atmosphere through latent heat of condensation in the clouds. That's the way solar heating is transferred from the surface into the atmosphere, and it heats up the troposphere about 10, 15 kilometers, and that generates all the tropical circulations, interacts with the global circulation. So in a very short sentence, that's the dynamical importance. And of course, annual rainfall is very high for 7 million square kilometers. And of course, and this, your center here does a lot of studies, important studies on this as well. And this is something we should also value as much as the other natural components of the Amazon system. But of course, so we can scientifically conclude, however, the Amazon is also subjected to the global acceleration in the Anthropocene. This was produced by another Amazonian scientist working in Indiana University, Eduardo Brondizio. It's a very nice representation. I think all of you are familiar with the great acceleration of the Anthropocene. After World War II, everything, use of natural resources, increased exponential, and also the results, the change in the Earth system components, CO2, forests, pollution, water, everything also is increasing exponentially. Of course, in the Amazon, as you know, this was 20 years delayed. It did not start after World War II. It started in the 70s when all Amazonian countries, not only Brazil, decided to, quote unquote, integrate Amazon into the mainstream economics of the country. This was, let's say, more abrupt, perhaps, in Brazilian Amazon, but that happened all over. So the result we know is a big transformation of the Amazonian system. And that this is just one satellite imagery, just showing areas of, this is only Brazil, sorry, Brazil deforestation patterns. It's well known, the arc of deforestation associated with, and even looking at the image, you can see that after 2005, this rate of this red in the picture declines, because basically we know the rates of deforestation decline abruptly, fortunately, after 2005. So this is well-known story. And, you know, there are many ideas, but my own idea is that getting the Amazonian resource into mainstream economy was an excuse. The real motivation in Brazil, but don't forget that many other Amazonian countries at that time, the 70s, they were under military dictatorships. So my idea, although this is social science, it's a matter of judgment, there is no way to prove mathematically, but my idea is that really the main interest of the Brazilian military, it was a geopolitical occupation, more than economic occupation. So that's why they subsidize a lot of large cattle ranches, all roads crisscrossing the region. And in 1972, two researchers in Belém, before Embrapa was born in Belém, before Embrapa was born actually, in an institute in Belém, which became Embrapa Eastern Amazon Research Center, they coined this sentence: the occupation of the Amazon will follow the cattle's footsteps. A ocupação da Amazônia vai seguir a pata do boi, em português. So, and in fact, I mean, this is the case. This is 1972. We are in 2018. That did not change, unfortunately. So, and when the Portuguese came to Brazil, 1500, what they did, brought the cattle. Initially, the cattle did not survive well in the Atlantic rainforest, so they start colonizing northeast Brazil because it was dry and shrubland. But eventually, they cut down the Atlantic forest and they gave rise to cattle ranches even before sugarcane. So cattle is a very important action in this country as well. The move to the west was also related, not only, but also related to moving cattle to the west. So cattle is a very important element, spearhead of colonization process of environmental impacts. Then, I mean, we start paying attention in the late 80s. In fact, I mean, everybody, this was the cover of Time in 1989, torching the Amazon because, you know, satellites, this is my former institute, INPE, start producing this annual assessment. And then the first one, 1988, look at that, 22,000 square kilometers, and a little bit less in 89. So that caught worldwide attention, and then we start getting very concerned. This is just one sample of the type of deforestation pattern. You can see there the years, and this is well known to this community, the so-called fishbone pattern. And that started as these lines, these dirt roads, 100-hectare plots, to settlers coming from many parts of Brazil, southern Brazil, Maranhão, etc. But if you look at the recent picture, you're going to see 2017 picture. This is a continuous. Rondônia has over 50% deforested, and that became almost a continuous area of agriculture and cattle ranching. I will just show a few things here, what the risks are about. So this is just a diagram to illustrate a lot of the research I've been involved with my students. Oh, I have to be there.
No, that's fine.
But you can see, we you know, in a nutshell, that's the left hand is the Amazon as a system. You can see it's a stable equilibrium. You perturb, then the forest will come back. But then we also found out, theoretically, with modeling studies, that there may be a second equilibrium, which is forest savanna, quite degraded savanna. And these are two stable equilibria. If you, on Thursday, we'll give you the details. If you cut down the forest, savanna will replace, and that is stable. Stable because the savanna will change the climate, it will reduce the rainfall, and then becomes a savanna climatic envelope. Long dry seasons, seasonal, long dry seasons, hot and fire. So all those elements make a savanna. If you have more droughts and forest fires, then you make this savanna equilibrium much more robust, because then this is deeper. And because savannas are adapted naturally to forest fires and to long dry seasons. Forests are not. So basically, I mean, and we are studying, and I will say more on Thursday, how you could perturb that equilibrium, how you move from here to here, and then forest fire frequency, lengthening of the dry season, increasing climate extremes. And we came through a lot of modeling results to those two tipping points, the thresholds, 4 degrees warming through climate change, or 40% deforestation. And you know, this editorial Tom Lovejoy and I wrote, we conclude that 25% deforestation is the threshold if you have all the other drivers simultaneously acting upon the Amazon. So basically, this is a very short summary. I have this summary: independent thresholds for degrees for 40%. However, when you put everything together, this is probably the safe operating space. Safe operating space. If you look at drivers of change, if you look at how the agribusiness sector sees the Amazon in the future, they want to get to 50%. So there is a big conflict here. If this is right, I mean, this is a scientific result, but of course it depends on modeling, there are uncertainties. But so there's a big mismatch between the desires of expanding the agricultural frontier and the stability. We are seeing major droughts. Climate change projects those droughts to become very common. The risk of savanization, I call savanization, some people call forest dieback. I call savanization because it's really what ecological succession would indicate is a savanna. So it's not a complete forest dieback in which you have grasses replacing forest. It's more like, you know, a savanna. But anyway, it will be also, in a way, a forest dieback. The risk is increasing. And even if the Amazon countries are successful to halt deforestation to zero, still we have global climate change, which does not depend on the Amazonian countries. So it's a very tough problem. We have to have a successful implementation of the Paris Agreement to make sure that we stay on the safe operating space. Can we stop deforestation in the Amazon? Tough question. Of course, we in Brazil, for many years, and some of you certainly studied this in great detail, there was this idea that this is deforestation rates in Brazil and Amazon up to 2004. So in the 90s and 2000, everybody said, what's driving deforestation? Demand of beef and grains from the global market. China was growing like crazy, and the commodity prices were increasing. So that was the prevailing theory, because it was empirical theory. You see increase deforestation, increase commodity prices. However, Brazil, but not only Brazil, deforestation declining in all Amazonian countries for a while. So that was really Marina Silva as a minister. She started in 2004 a new policy, which was in fact very successful. She was strongly supported by President Lula at that time, 2003, 2004, up to 2008. You remember, 2008 she left government. So basically, what happens is then we saw that dramatic decline in deforestation. It has to do with this major policy legislation and implementation, very strict implementation. And then we had a major result, a number of studies, and some certainly done by people here from the center and this program, really look at all the drivers of this change, and they conclude it was mostly policy. Of course, this policy was reduction of subsidized credit, increase of protected areas. Basically, I mean, the two main aspects of that. We save billions of tons of avoided emissions. So those three: sustainable use, indigenous land, protected areas, and also the end of the credit, cheap subsidized credit. So anyway, very successful, perhaps one of the most successful cases of implementing policies to reduce deforestation in the planet. So we had a big success. This is Brazil for the conservation areas. 54% of Brazilian Amazon is under some kind of conservation protection. 50% of the Amazon, if I got that figure right. I have also I like to show this as well, because you see This is deforestation. This is meat and soy prices in this time up to 2016, and really you don't see any correlation. You don't see any correlation. This is base 2015, so this is the real price of meat and soy. If you want to look at total output, calculated the total agricultural output from all Amazonian municipalities, all including northern Mato Grosso. This is Amazon area under the forest biome, and you see here the output is growing like crazy and deforestation is declining. So I think it is important scientifically but also politically to demonstrate what the European countries demonstrated through the Kyoto Protocol. The systems are not coupled. You can have GDP growth without increasing emissions. I think here, although I'm not an economist, this is simple calculations, but I think we know for a fact the systems are not coupled. They may be marginally coupled. Perhaps a few weeks, the price of beef goes up. It would make one particular cattle rancher to go there and open up. But at microeconomic level, perhaps you see. But when you look at macroeconomic level, really the data is very clear. The systems are decoupled. And of course, these are just surveys of the Brazilian population. And this is slightly old to 2012, but there are newer polls, and they show the same thing. I show this just to say Brazilians are all against deforestation in the Amazon. Over 90% in the Amazon itself, 85% of Brazilians are against deforestation. I think I show this data just to perhaps an indicator how weak is Brazilian democracy, because this people's will does not translate into really permanent policies as we are seeing deforestation increasing. So basically we have to seek what future we want, scenarios of future deforestation. If we lose sight or lose grip of the policies, it will be 50% deforest or sustainability policies that we can halt the deforestation. So it's up in the air that. So that really comes to the main topic here. We proposed in a paper, PNAS, in 2016, this third way. I will get more into that. What would be the third way? So this is the very large protected areas in the Amazon, about 50%. One of the largest areas, protected areas in all over the planet, in the tropics for sure, much more than tropical Africa or Southeast Asia. So that's what we call the first way. We got to third way. I will explain what is first way. First way is what we call expanding protected areas in the Amazon. Very effective, very effective. This is 2000. This is 2013. 54% of the Brazilian Amazon in any way indigenous land, protected areas, and also the settlements of the agrarian reform, reservas extrativistas, reservas do desenvolvimento sustentável, sustainable development reserves. Wonderful. I mean, this is always shown in Brazil by everybody, government, as great success. However, that policy in isolation may not guarantee the survival of these protected areas. And I just give you a very simple example here. This is Xingu, 28,000 square kilometers, one of the largest indigenous land in Brazil. But look at that, it's encroached by development, deforestation, and also climate. Climate is changing. This is the result of 2010 very severe drought. 30% of the Indian land burned. It's a mix of very dry conditions, but also some penetration of these issues here. development around. So 30%. So even a protect area is maybe protect on paper, but climate change encroachment of development really put a lot of those areas under risk. So this is just to highlight that protect area may not be protected for forever. So, of course, Brazil has a great opportunity to put emphasis and resources and intelligence, because Brazil in 2015 made a very ambitious nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. Brazil said we are going to restore 12 million hectares of biomes in all over Brazil, about almost 4 million in 800 in the Amazon, almost 5 million hectares, almost 50,000 square kilometers, very significant, a lot in rainforest. Of course, this is the deficit of areas if one abides by the law, the Forest Act, after approval 2012. But you see the red is where you have the deficit, yellow. Of course, there is a lot of also yellow, not so much red in the Amazon. So that would be perhaps areas more prone to receive these projects or restoration projects. So I just want to highlight here, it's a great opportunity to reverse the recent trend of deforestation, and we should really pay attention to that. The cost estimated is not cheap. 10 to 16 billion dollars up to 2030. That's the Brazilian NDC plan. 10 billion if you assign more areas for natural restoration. 16 billion if you want to do a quick job and you really produce a lot of projects to quickly restore ecosystems. So this is, I'm showing that as a great opportunity here, really to protect, increase the resilience of protected areas, to increase the size of protected areas. This is the first way. The second way, of course, is the resource-intensive development, the so-called the global farm, as the Nature magazine called, and I also add the global cattle ranch. You know, the conditions are good for producing grain and producing grass, water, adequate climate so far, and plenty of land, usually not very expensive land. So that's where the expansion of the agricultural frontier is moving, not only in the Amazon, but also over the savannas. However, economically, let's look at the figures here. I'm sure many of you know about this issue even much more than I do. But just let me summarize here. Many studies, even a more productive cattle ranch has only $100 per hectare per year. In the Amazon, historically, it's more like 35, 40. Peanuts. This is really very little, does not make much sense economically. Selective logging, 100 to 400, mostly legal. Of course, for sustainable logging, this is, you should expect, you should wait for 25, 30 years. All this sustainable, the FLONAS, under sustainable logging, you know, they take few logs and then they have to go back only 25, 30 years later. So this is, of course, there is some money involved here, but just want to give you a scale, only up to $400 per hectare, maximum. Red, and the environmental services, carbon storage. Who knows? I mean, nobody knows. I mean, look here, $5 per ton of CO2. You know, the price in the market today even less than that. The Chicago market. No, who knows? Can you predict what the value of carbon will be in the future? It's hard to predict. Some optimists, they say $30, $40. Oh, wonderful. I mean, that goes to that high. So then, you know, avoiding deforestation becomes really a lot, but you should not really count too much. But 2,000, 3,000, it's much more, but of course it's only once you get that store, and then you have to do a lot of things with that, those $3,000 equivalent, let's say, at best condition, 30 years of cattle ranching. And even soy, a maximum 200 hectares per year, productive soy plantation. But of course, soy is thousands of hectares, so it becomes a huge industry because of size, scale. But that's, keep in mind that those figures that I will compare with some other in a few minutes. So the second way, also I want to highlight that the productivity is very low. I compare the agricultural output of the Amazon, all of the Amazonian municipalities, against São Paulo state agricultural productivity. And then the conclusion is the agricultural productivity overall in the Amazon is 1/4 of that of São Paulo state. And São Paulo state productivity still can go up. São Paulo is about 55, 60% to maximum productivity, not theoretical, practical productivity in ranching, sugarcane, and everything else is produced in São Paulo. So Amazon is way, way behind. As I said, the goal of cattle ranching was not productivity, was really expanding the frontier. So, of course, there is a lot of talk, many well-meaning people, I think there is a lot of studies that said, okay, for 10 years, a lot of government in Brazil, in other countries, NGOs, scientific community, all engaged into this so-called intensive, sustainable intensification. Okay, that's fine. It looked like a great idea. So everybody, the coalition of environmental organizations, agribusiness, the associations of producers, trading companies, etc., and established in several Amazonian countries toward that goal. It looked like a good idea. I mean, okay, fine. I mean, if you can satisfy global demands of grain and beef with intensifying production, fine. You don't, the driver for further deforestation will cease. That was a naive idea. And then now we're starting to see that with very serious studies. I'm sure you're all aware of this study by Lambin et al., published a few months ago. Basically, the question is, do supply chain initiatives for slowing down deforestation work? Soil moratorium, for instance, soil moratorium in Brazil and Amazon, which seems to be working. But then, this paper published recently in Nature, Climate Change, basically, I will give you just a few highlights of that paper, which really demolished this simple-minded idea that there was, it would work. Basically, zero deforestation policies by companies may be insufficient to achieve broader impact on their own due to leakage, lack of transparency, and traceability, selective adoption, and the smallholder marginalization. Many of you study these issues for decades. You certainly know or probably agree. For instance, leakage, what happened? The soil moratorium in the Brazilian Amazon leaked to Bolivia. So Bolivia expanded a lot in soy plantations. So basically, this study demolished the idea that you could come easily to an agreement with the supply side, with the big companies, with the trading companies, with the producers associations, and that really did not work. As we know now, we have more data to show. And this is a newspaper article. I just want to highlight, this was also 30 January. It was found out that companies fined for illegal deforestation donated $20 million to finance campaigns, and they elected not only that money, but of 249 elected House members out of 430. So you see here the power that these companies, and they were fined for illegal deforestation. They are, it's like now our Brazilian version of NRA. We don't have a good, powerful national rifle association, but we have a very powerful agribusiness associations. And they finance illegally campaigns. We all know because we had the plea bargain of this major king of the beef industry, Joesley and the Batista, and then we know exactly how they proceed, etc., etc. So I say that because in Brazil at least, but we have seen the renunciation of the Peruvian president a few days ago, so we know it's not only in Brazil. Corruption really still has so much power, and that's why I think, you know, Eric Lamban's conclusion here make a lot of sense, because this sector they had support by the politicians. So basically, I came to this. Okay, I'm saying this two first way conservation, an increased efficiency of commodity production. Second way, I still believe they are necessary conditions. I mean, conservation for sure, but also why not? Because it makes sense economically to have more profits. But I think they are very far from being sufficient. So what else? So that's I want to get to now the provocation to you. Okay, all of us are involved one way or another with the sustainability goals via sustainable development goals, UN sustainable development goals, or some other ways. I just want to, I mean, I'm part of an effort, IASA, Earth Institute, Columbia University, Stockholm Resilience Center, to produce an idea about what the great transformations. This group identified 6 major disruptive transformations for sustainability: energy, food, land use, and biosphere, cities, sustainable production and consumption, technology, and also human capacity and demography. I just want to highlight one area disruptive that could help a lot: food, land use, and health diets. Let me say, what would be, it's not even the third way I'm going to present in a few minutes. It's just, let's see what the impact of healthy diets would have. So, this slide is perhaps not very clear, but this is a recent report published a few weeks ago by World Resource Institute and Climate Focus on reducing beef consumption in US, Brazil, and China. But these figures are well known. This is the environmental impact of beef. Look at greenhouse gas emissions. You can see the scale: beef, lamb, pork, chicken, milk, and soy. It's tremendous. 46 to vegetable protein, 3, milk 3, and 5. So you see the scale. Of course, also water usage. You can see the scale. Pollution, water pollution. Pork also has, and chicken, because of intensity, they also pollute the waters. But by and large, I mean, the ecological footprint of beef, as we know, is very, very large. And then another land area to produce 1 kilogram of beef, 214 square meters, and these for lamb, pork, chicken, milk, and soy. Tremendously less. I mean, there is the scale. You can see the scale. And the main driver, the main reason for deforestation in hectares per year: 2,100,000 hectares is beef. Pork and poultry is this figure. Soy is not negligible, and also palm oil. So those are the main drivers of tropical deforestation. Beef, whey, the main driver of tropical deforestation. And when you look at beef consumption, beef, not meat, beef. Brazil, 28 kilos per person per year. US, 27. China, 4. World average, 7. China, in fact, I mean, it's for beef, but on average, they eat much more pork, poultry. US also, when you put all animal protein, this number goes above 75. But the World Health Organization says the healthy level of this animal protein should be half. So imagine we have these levels, what's the driver? So healthy diets, I'm saying, you know, if the world moves into healthy diets, we make a total difference for the Amazon. I mean, the driver of deforestation would decline much, much more. Even if you want to keep, to use some of the animal protein, vegetable protein, soy, to produce, you know, food. So this is one disruptive strategy that many people are looking into. It's difficult because diets are intrinsically deep-rooted in culture. So, but perhaps it seems that the younger generation are more, let's say, vegan and things like that, vegetarians, etc. It's more prevalent in younger generations. So there is a little bit of hope. Perhaps the younger generations will adopt much more healthier diets with much less beef and much less animal protein. So this is one area. Now let me move another area this is my proposal. So this is the first way. This is the second way, resource intensive, cattle, mining, hydropower, and grain. So basically what we are saying is we might want to explore biodiversity, bioeconomy driven development, and there we will explore more this. So basically in this, on this diagram of the major disruptive transformations for sustainability, this third way that we're proposing is food, land use, biosphere, biodiversity, forests, along with sustainable production, and along with the tools of the fourth industrial revolution, particularly biotechnology, nanotechnology, digital communications, and the material science. So the union, which is at the core of the fourth industrial revolution, which is ongoing very rapidly, and it's changing the world, changing the market, labor market. But you know, the third way that we're proposing is the union of these elements there. And we'll say a little bit why we can perhaps think about, because we had this sharp reduction in deforestation in Brazil, Amazon, but also in all Amazonian countries for 10 years. Unfortunately, deforestation is going back up in the last 2 years, 3 years. So the Amazon third way is basically a very simple principle. We did not create any ideas. I mean, the talk about having a biodiversity-driven economy is very old. I mean, people have been talking about that for decades. The novelty in our proposal is how to bring modern technologies to bear. So of course it's basically tapping into the biological and biomimetic assets as a main wealth generation. Of course, there are many limitations. Less than 2% of Brazilian researchers work in the Amazon. The Brazilian Amazon is responsible for about 8 to 9% of GDP, has about 11.5% of the population, but only 2% of PhDs work in the Amazon. So we have this imbalance. Certainly we need knowledge generation, limited access to biological and biomimetic assets, still a problem, and complex to regulate as well. Many of you study and accompany the Nagoya Protocol, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and all the issues related to access to that knowledge. I have some animation here just to show you a little bit of the concept. For some reason, it's moving very slowly. I think I may not be able to show the animation. Yeah, the Amazon third way. Let me skip because somehow there was a problem here. The Amazon third way, so basically the question is, what's the potential for biodiversity-driven bioeconomy in the Amazon to produce viable value chains for food, many industries, food, nutraceutical, cosmetic, fragrance, pharmaceuticals, industrial oils, bioindustry. You have to generate bioindustry. What's the potential? And how to unleash that potential? Let me give you the example of the acai, which is well known, reached global markets. Everybody knows, everybody loves acai. Acai, when I moved to the Amazon in 1975, acai was only consumed by local populations. I loved acai. In ice cream, juice, of course, this is a basic staple with manioc flour, like rice and beans for us in southeastern Brazil. In the Amazon was acai and manioc flour. So, but it was like hundreds of other Amazonian products only consumed in the Amazon. That was 1975. So there was a great transformation. I don't have time to tell you a lot, but this is the acai distribution. The more red, the more acai. Acai, the two species of acai. Palm tree is the most common tree in the Amazon. Most common tree in the Amazon. So, you see a lot of density in these areas here along the floodplains. That's where the systems are. Fortunately, historically, and Eduardo Brondizio from Indiana University, he studied this at length. Acai are managed by forest farmers in agroforest systems that not only maintain a standing forest landscape, although of course there are more trees of acai, they clean up a little bit, but to reduce deforestation in the production areas as well. Instead of becoming cattle ranches, they become acai agroforest systems. Acai, I will tell you the economic figure of acai. However, if you look at the chain, the production chain, collection is manual. The level of technology is very, very simple. Even as soon as they industrialize all these things here, and basically they export the pulp. This is very simple, very simple. I mean, a lot of value adding is not happening in the Amazon. It's happening in Sao Paulo. It's happening in California. It's happening where the industry is adding value. You go to any drugstore in the US, you'll find at least 5 to 10 products that have acai. But is this thing being produced in the Amazon? No, nothing. The Amazon is producing this, and also a little bit part of palm now. So basically, it's very, why can't we have more value adding in the Amazon? Because that's what I call bio-industries. That's what I call good jobs and the development. Even adding very little value along the value chain, the supply chain. Acai studies by economist Francisco Costa, University Federal do Pará, many of you know him, from NAIA, is $1.6 billion to the Amazon economy. Almost 300,000 tons of acai pulp are produced a year. So it's third after beef and after illegal timber, mostly illegal. Of course, minerals is a different story. I'm not putting minerals or iron ore and other things, but compared to natural products, renewable natural products, beef, timber, and this is the third. And according to Francisco Costa, the rate of growth of acai in 5 years, it will be second. Also, acai, in addition to all the products, there is other uses like natural marker for plaque, Embrapa patent. This is more high tech. It's more high tech. They found the properties of this one substance in acai. So I can just show. And profitability. Remember the figures I showed you. Net profitability, 300,000 people depend on acai in Pará states. $200 a year, unmanaged. This is mostly acai occurring naturally. highly managed systems, agroforest systems, up to 2,000. Average is about 1,000. So no comparison. This is only one product coming out of natural systems, agroforestry system. I like to show, because different than many other products, this has reached $1 billion. It's a reality. It's not something that we are only thinking about the future. So acai is a very good example to show that if there are markets, and of course acai in the global market is a niche market. It's not potato, it's not rice, but that niche market is sufficient to generate a very important economy, even though only 15% of this reaches the people producing the acai. So because there is very little value adding, so you have really to work to add value. Another second example is Ucuuba, Virola suranimensis, which is traditionally, when I remember when I lived in the Amazon, mostly broomsticks were made of this, very good for that. So it was going extinct. And then a Brazilian company, that's Natura Cosmetics company, in their research and development lab, unfortunately in São Paulo, not in the Amazon, the lab, not unfortunately, I mean, but the lab is in São Paulo. They do not have a beautiful research and development lab in the Amazon. But they found a property of the butter made of the oil from the seeds. And that very important property for cosmetics. And they had a capacity development program for the riverine populations that used to cut down the tree. And the annual income generated by a standing Ucuuba tree is 3 times larger than that single income from a felled tree. So before they chopped down, sold the timber, had one, let's say, $100, and now they were having $300 a year with a standing tree. So this is, I want just to show the importance of science, technology, to income, to wealth. Still, do not put these people to the middle class. This is another consideration. But they are much better off now. I just want to show these 2 examples, one in which science and technology has played a very central role, also with capacity development. So basically what we are proposing, oh, by the way, I have to thank very much our meeting in October, because I added this thing, flowing rivers, because of the meeting here. You may remember some people on the outside there in that circle said, no, don't say only standing forest. You remember that? Said, I can't remember who said that, sorry. I should give credit to that person. And he said, we should also have to say flowing rivers. And after that, I adopted, and I think it's absolutely correct. It's not only standing forest, it's also flowing rivers. Biodiversity driven bioeconomy. So basically harnessing the biological biomimetic assets with modern technologies. It has to be socially inclusive, ecological sound development, equitable and fair sharing of benefits. Ideal, I'm not saying this is easy, but certainly we have to, we believe we have to start here. I want to give you a few examples. So we are working in this diagram. I'm not going to have much time to tell you, but basically we are writing a book. I hope to finish this book by this year, in which we lay out what would be, the socio-economic and political drivers, the conservation first way, resource-intensive development second way, knowledge societies, which is our third way. We are living in the century of knowledge. But of course, then we look for solution spaces. Those are driven by policy. Those are driven by traditional knowledge. Those are driven by technology and also community-driven. And then we have this determinant of sustainable pathway for the Amazon, technology, research, education, legal framework, then the resource, biological and biomimetic assets. We're not dealing much with ecosystem service, although this is very important, but we are dealing more with tangible resources. And then the implementers, agroforest systems, innovative entrepreneurship, bio-industries, local and global value chains. So we are working all these things together to propose these ideas, and I will explore a few elements here, mostly the technological elements here. Of course, I mean, what I'm saying here is so classical in the industrialized nations in development. So basically, we are also proposing that we have to have advanced biology labs in the Amazon, public and private, not only public. We have to attract entrepreneurs, creating technological clusters and innovation ecosystems for a biodiversity-driven, and also connectivity with labs outside, labs of excellence outside the Amazon. So this is a very classical model of scientific and technological development. So we are proposing as well in the Brazilian Amazon, maybe three top-level, state-of-the-art biological labs, one at Embrapa, one at INPA, and perhaps one more. So now we need a network of many more of these products dedicated to untapping this knowledge that we need to develop new uses for biodiversity. And also to develop local capacity is a key element. Local capacity is a key element. A range of applications from non-timber biodiversity products to high-end genetic resources. I will give you, to end, I will give you a few examples. On purpose, we decided not to take up on this project timber. Timber may be important. Timber is economically feasible, etc. Brazil, and I think certainly many Amazonian countries have all these big plans. Brazil created the Serviço Florestal, the Forest Service. They run a beautiful inventory. They created the FLONAS, the reserves for sustainable logging. But I tell you, I mean, this is not working well. This has a lot of problems. In one of the FLONAS in Rondônia, the company selected to sustainably explore logging. They had problems. Criminals killed a few people there. So timber is very complex, perhaps some importance, but very complex because it is in the hands of criminal organizations. So we decide to stay clear of timber, not to say it's completely not important, but in this project we prefer to focus on areas that would present much more potential and are more sustainable. Of course, a model like that has to pay attention. This is for Brazil, but this is true for all of the Amazon. The Amazon is not a void of human presence, as you know better than I do. So this is all the communities, local communities in the Amazon. So it has to be based on local communities. It cannot be only something for Manaus, Belém, La Paz, Lima, and Bogota, etc. So it has to really be based on a distributed type of bioeconomy and bioindustries, not only in Sao Paulo or Rio or abroad. So I want just to show one more element that we are producing, still in the proposal phase. This is not finalized, but the way we conceive how we could bring these realities of modern technologies to the forest people, to the riverine populations, deep in the Amazon. So we created the concept of Amazon Creative Labs. I will explain. That's really this part is our strategy for capacity development. And we are looking for funding. There are good perspectives of getting Fundo Amazônia, Amazon Fund, and many other possibilities. So we want to test these ideas. Amazon Creative Labs would be transportable labs to run capacity development exercise in the field. Basically, they would be to promote transformations, socio-economic, technological transformations. They are transportable. They can be transported by roads, by plane, by boats, and they are laboratories set up to provide training, let's say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month of training to communities, small towns, communities, and also on campus of universities to promote the idea for undergraduate and just graduate young people, to get these people into entrepreneurships with technology, with knowledge. So that's the idea. I'm not going to go into details, but we plan, just as an example, we plan 3 of these labs. I will go a little bit. They are state-of-the-art labs. And this is a nice thing about fourth industrial revolution. Everything is becoming accessible, cheap. So you cannot think, you don't have to think that all those things, only very sophisticated, very expensive labs, centralized in developed nations or in big capitals, in big universities. No, these things can now move to anywhere in the world. I will give you 3 examples, but these are just examples. I mean, the potential is infinite. Cupuaçu is one example. Basically, this example would be a lab that would provide capacity building for local populations to produce Cupuaçu chocolate, which has the name Cupulat. It's a top quality chocolate, has some nutrition value even better than cocoa chocolate. So that would be like, you have one of those facilities and you do capacity building to use modern technologies, even let's say 3D printing to produce artistic types of the populatis, etc. I don't have time to go into all the details. If you're interested, I have documentation. But just one example. So you would go out in the field and we do capacity building, capacity development, and really bring the technologies, state-of-the-art technologies. The other very important way for these laboratories is a bi-directional. It's not only bringing technology, it's also learning from traditional knowledge and the ways the population handle nature. And so you try to see ways to give value to traditional knowledge, to improve the use of traditional knowledge. So these labs are not only to bring high technologies, to mediate the conversation between high technology and traditional knowledge. This is Cupulati. The other one that we produce a template is Brazil nuts, because of the economic importance. Brazil nuts all over the Amazon, something like $300 million industry. And this is also, the way to handle. The Brazil nut has a very serious problem of aflatoxin, and these labs could really provide capacity building to reduce the loss due to aflatoxin, and also produce a lot of products, oils, and a lot of other products to give really capacity to these people to add value. Basically, they will not only export the most basic, the nuts, they would add value, which are, of course, a famous company from Cobija in Bolivia. It became a world leader in that, because they also modernized a little bit. And this follows along that idea, but bringing that capacity to the populations in the future. And the last and the high end, I just want to, I think this is also animation, but it may not, no, it's not working animation. I want to give a high level, but I will skip it because the animation is not. The high level application, what I think is very important, is genomics. So, the potential of describing the genome, every species, is tremendous. It's the future of biology. It's the future of industries. Some people even say the future of humanity, but perhaps a little bit too much, because there's culture, there's philosophy, but it's the future of many things, future of many industries. The human genome cost $3.6 billion. It was revealed to the world here in this country, funded by government money, into year 2000. So the first one, technology, the techniques were being developed. how much does it cost today to get the sequence of all those 4 letters for any species? $1,000. And the price is slashing down. In 5 years, it will cost $100. So, oh, great. I mean, we can have genome of species from the Amazon. So the third, just to give a little bit about this project, our project made a partnership with the Earth Biogenome Project. This is an international project led by this country, funded initially by National Science Foundation. Basically, just to give a comparison, genomics, if you really would try to have the genome of every species, which is now 1.5 million species, you need this kind of 2,000 to 40,000 petabytes a year just to see YouTube, astronomy, and Twitter, just to give you an idea how much data and information. And these genomic codes in the future is assumed to be the most important biological information that one can think of. So it will have not only scientific value, it will have a lot of potential for curing diseases and a lot of many applications. So this is the future. So what we are proposing is really registering these biological and also biomimetic assets of the Amazon and to create what we call Amazonian Bank of Codes. And this would be some kind of system that would register, if you are familiar with blockchain, it will be the genome would be registered on a blockchain, which is a public system of registering. So that would, this intellectual property of this registry would be also, it would serve as a purpose for registering traditional knowledge as well. So this is an idea under development, which is done by IT people, blockchain, etc. However, there is a field element of this, which is one more Amazon created labs, which is genomics. So basically, now one of these portable sequencers costs $10,000, and one person, a technician, but not a biologist, you can train anybody in the Amazon anywhere to run, to prepare a sample, to do this. Today, it takes about 2 days of work. Preparing a sample, collecting, preparing a sample, running this sequencer, and getting the genome. So this is very practical. It can be done. The Earth Biogenome Project is sponsoring many of these activities. We want really to develop this Amazon Creative Lab, one specialized for biology, for high-end genomics, and particularly with to provide capacity development for people in the Amazon to be able to register genome of species in their neighborhood, in their indigenous land. So, I just want to highlight this high level, high end, because why not? I mean, why people, indigenous people, forest people cannot have access to high tech? Why cannot make advantage of high tech? So we always think, high tech is for highly developed societies, and these people have to do only basic things. So the disruptive nature of our project, the third way, is really to try to bring high tech. In fact, everybody has high tech. Mobile phone is very high tech, and everybody has mobile phone. So why not bringing other elements which would make their lives economically and socially more inclusive and better? So basically, this is the end. I think this is very disruptive. I understand many people are a bit skeptical that we can bring this high fourth industrial revolution. But I think, we really have to bring this. It's necessary to attempt at least to bring the disruptive technology to the heart of the forest. And I finalize, I think should be something very familiar to this community here, knowledge as the base of sustainability for the Amazon, for everywhere. And I like, many of you have known Professor Berta Becker, our dear Berta Becker, and she coined this sentence that I used a lot to add value to the heart of the forest. So basically, in summary, what we want is science and technology must offer solutions for the emergence of these innovative forests, standing forests, flowing river, new economy with local bioindustries. Otherwise, you don't have good jobs, you don't have inclusion. But also, I did not move much into that. But this is as important as this one. So they are complementary. One depends on the other, which is empowerment of the people and quality and appropriate education. So this really forms a set of necessities to develop the third way for the Amazon. And thank you very much for your patience. Gracias.